Hello everybody, this is JT Productions and welcome back to a different kind of video for today. If you saw my post, for this off season at least, I am not going to continue doing the team by team preview and prediction videos. They just take up too much time and I I'm very busy this time of year. But instead, I will be doing um, sort of deep dives on specific games. Those being, at least for right now, this first one, which I made a post about these deep dives. The first suggestion was by AceDog278. He said, "Do Texas and Georgia." So that's what we're going to do. Started out, uh, both teams projected to be very good this year. They're both ranked in the top five. Both are two of the favorites to win it all in the SEC. They have good um, odds to make the 12-team playoff this year. And they play each other in, I believe, October. So let's just deep dive into that. Well, Georgia plays Texas after a stretch where they play at Alabama, at home against Auburn, and at home against Mississippi State. The good thing about that is you are glad that you don't have to play Texas back to back with Alabama. That's the one good thing. I'm not saying that Auburn is not a tough team to play, especially since it's a rivalry, but we get them at home, and they have not beaten us at home since 2005. And the last time that was close at home was 2016 when we didn't have to score an offensive touchdown to win the game. So, with that being said, uh, it's going to be a tough matchup either way. Texas, on the other hand, I believe they play us after a bye week, but before that bye week, they do play Oklahoma. So, another emotional game before us. Uh, it could go in Georgia's favor. So let's do a deep dive into our schedule or our schedule. I'm thinking about the preview and prediction videos. Let's go into the roster for each team and see how everything stacks up. Well, for Georgia, Carson Beck comes back for his second year as a starter. He's a redshirt senior. He looked good last year, improved as the year went on. All in all, he was a really good passer. The only two things that I think he could improve on from last year are his deep ball accuracy, especially down the seams over the middle, and in big games where the defense is rattling him, his composure. The Alabama game especially was a bad game for him with regards to his composure. You saw he just it, it was a combination of him playing scared, not necessarily scared, but cautious and at times, and just a conservative game called by Kirby and Mike Bobo. You also had two throws that could have been interceptions that were not because the defense dropped them. So if Carson can take that next step and improve on those, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now, behind him, you have in my opinion, a really competitive battle for the second string quarterback between Gunnar Stockton, who's been here for 3 years, it'll be his third year, and transfer from Arizona State, Jaden Rashada. Well, if if you are familiar with the story between Jaden Rashada and Florida, this is very funny to you. Jaden Rashada, if you don't know, was a four-star recruit in not this past cycle, but the cycle before. He was originally committed to, I believe, Miami before Florida flipped him, and then he ended up wanting to get his letter of intent dissolved, pretty much. And the reason was a big booster with Florida had promised him a good bit of money of NIL money to come to Florida, but the booster got cold feet and backed out on it. Florida couldn't have the money, so Jaden Rashada said, "Nah, I'm going somewhere else." And by that time, the other schools that offered him money had backed down. So he went to Arizona State, started in a couple games. Arizona State was just very bad last year. He ended up getting benched a couple, one or two times, but he entered the transfer portal and decided to transfer to Georgia. Now, this is where it gets good. As soon as he gets to Georgia, he asked for Kirby Smart's blessing to sue Billy Napier and the Florida Boosters. Not the University of Florida, not the football team, just Billy Napier and just the Boosters. That is hilarious, and it's such a good memory to add for this rivalry between Georgia and Florida. So there you go. I think he's got a lot of potential. He was just with a bad team last year. Let him sit behind Beck and maybe Stockton next year and develop. Then I think he'll be a very good quarterback. And fourth string, we have the freshman Ryan Puglisi. He's probably not going to see any time this year until something really catastrophic happens. He's probably going to be redshirted. He's a 4-star coming out of this last class, and he was coming in with Dylan Raiola when he was still committed to Georgia, and he never backed down of his commitment. So I think he's really bought in, and I appreciate that from him. Now, in the backfield as well, we have our running back room, which I believe this could be our best, our running back room with the most potential since 2017 when we had Chubb, Michelle, and Swift. That may be big words, but just hear me out. Our projected starter is junior transfer Trevor Etienne from Florida, another stab in the back for Florida. He is a very dynamic runner, very elusive, very fast, and he's just a really good running back. He may miss 1 or 2 games to start the year because of a DUI early this past offseason, but we shall see. Behind him is projected a sophomore, Roderick Robinson. He saw more time last season since there were a lot of injuries to running back. He has not impressed me a lot. He's a good running back. He just has not jumped off the paper at me yet, which I think he has the potential to. He's just a sophomore. Give it some time. Now, the running back that I'm most excited for, it's probably up there with ETN, is Branson Robinson. Now, if you don't remember, in 2022, he was a freshman. He came in, he was getting a lot of eyes looked at him because of how good he was in the preseason. He came out, he played in a lot of garbage time, but then against Auburn, I believe was the first time, he saw some rotation reps with Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, Dejon Edwards. He rotated in there, and he looked good. They call him Baby Chubb or Lil Chubb because of his resemblance to Nick Chubb as a runner. He suffered a leg injury, sadly, this past offseason in 2023, which made him miss the whole 2023 season, which he took his medical redshirt, so he's redshirt sophomore this year, which another year of eligibility for him. So I think him and ETN are going to make a dynamic duo for this team. And then at fourth string, we have Cash Jones. If you'll remember early last season when we had a lot of guys out, Cash Jones jumped in and he played very well against South Carolina, against Ball State, and against UT Martin. He was our main guy, really. Him, Roderick Robinson, and a running back who transferred, Andrew Paul, who I thought could have been really good, but he wanted to get some starting reps, I guess, and he transferred to Jacksonville State. Best of luck to him. But this running back room, I believe, has potential to be very good. Then at the wide receivers, which is a position that Kirby went after in the transfer portal hard. It's improved from last year. Besides losing Lad McConkey and Rosemary Jackson, we brought in an elite jump ball guy from Miami, Colby Young, senior transfer. He is, I think, like 6'5", 200 and something pounds, fast as ever. He's your prototypical NFL jump ball wide receiver, in my opinion. If you saw in the spring game, I get the spring game, but still, Carson threw up a jump ball to him. He made a miraculous catch. We have not had a jump ball guy like that since George Pickens, in my opinion. Well, I mean, A.D. Mitchell was like that, but he was not the size of Colby Young. Then the other two transfers, London Humphreys and Michael Jackson III, I believe are more of your slot, more Lad McConkey, Kyrus Jackson role type players. They even called London Humphreys um, the Vandy version of Lad McConkey. And Michael Jackson III, when he was at USC, he saw some time in that USC offense. He's a lot slimmer build. In my opinion, he's like Dom Lovett, but uh, we'll see if he can break into the starting lineup. Now, the guys that are returning, the main question mark for me is, will Arian Smith take that next step? Arian Smith is probably the fastest guy on the team, but he just is so inconsistent when it comes to his catches. He made some big catches in 2022, especially in the postseason against Ohio State. But he just last season he had so many drops. I don't remember besides the SEC championship catch, a catch he made past 15 to 20 yards that was a big play. So if he can be consistent, it'll be a very vital piece of the offense. Another question mark, and this is potential wise, is Anthony Evans. Another very fast guy. He's a sophomore. He's a freshman last year. He can be used. He can be used to very good efficiency in special teams, and if we need uh, like a burner, he's very quick. You saw him later last year against Alabama in the SEC championship. He returned a kick close to the red zone, I believe. And then against Florida State, he had a touchdown. And in the spring game, once again, spring game, but still, first throw from Gunnar Stockton was to Anthony Evans. He made a contested catch for a first down. He's got a lot of potential. I think he could be really good once he gets his chance. Then we come to our top three receivers: Dominic Lovett, Ra Thomas, and Dylan Bell. Dominic Lovett this year, I believe, is going to be filling the Lad McConkey role that McConkey had last year, just getting open and getting the first down. Him and Ra Thomas could fill that role. Dom Lovett's looking to be our number one guy, so we'll see. It may be a split role for that Lad McConkey role because Ra Thomas himself last year, especially against like Auburn, when McConkey was out, Ra Thomas filled in and was more than effective on third and medium, third and long, getting open, getting the first down. He's a very consistent receiver. If Dom Lovett can be consistent, uh, like Ra Thomas has, he'll be contending for a number one receiver. Then you have our Swiss Army knife, Dylan Bell. This guy played running back last year. This guy played wide receiver last year. He was like the Deebo Samuel of Georgia. Now, I'm not going to be crazy. Dylan Bell is not Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is a lot better than Dylan Bell. However, Dylan Bell last year made strides in his improvement. You saw a lot of balls by Carson Beck that were thrown outside the hashes, uh, down the like to Dylan Bell, who was streaking down the sideline, and Dylan Bell just makes a wonderful catch over his shoulder. So Dylan Bell, he could be a good number two, number one receiver for us. We'll just have to see. We have another junior, Cole Spears, good depth. Then we have two freshmen that are coming in. Sokovie White, who scored a touchdown in the spring game, and Nitro Tuggle, who is a highly talented out of high school. We'll see if those guys get into the rotation at all, but I don't know. At tight end, with Brock Bowers gone, we're going into sort of an era of not as good of a tight end room. Now, don't get me wrong, it's hard to live up to Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, but these guys, I think, bring more depth, in my opinion. Oscar Delp, he's not Brock Bowers, but he's good. He's a good blocker, and he's a good receiver. He reminds me a lot more of a more athletic Isaac Nauta than he does Brock Bowers. He's more of a He's not as fluid as a route runner, but he gets the job done. Behind him is a highly touted and spoken about tight end transfer from Stanford, Benjamin Urasek. Uh, they've been talking a lot of good things about him. Can he come in and just ball out? Sure, but it's hard to go to a new team and to a new offense. So we'll just have to see. Behind him is Lawson Lucky, who was a freshman last year. Lawson looked pretty good last year. Let's hope he makes more improvements. Then we have a freshman, Jaden Riddell, who was one of the top tight ends in the country last year, or this past cycle. We'll just have to see with him as well. Now, with the skill position out of the way, let's go to the offensive line, one of Kirby's favorite rooms to recruit. We have a lot of returning production in Ernest Green, Dylan Fairchild, and Tate Ratledge, who will probably be the anchors of this offensive line. Xavier Truss returns as well. However, he was very iffy last year when it came to playing offensive tackle. He originally was an offensive guard, but he had to fill in for Amarius Mims when he went down multiple times last year. So with Xavier Truss, if he takes the next step and he's a better tackle, great. If not, we're going to have to figure out if we're going to play sophomore Monroe Freeling, if we're going to bring in redshirt freshman Bo Hewley to play tackle, Micah Morris, or whatever. We just need to be very good at tackle. Then we're breaking in a new center, redshirt junior Jared Wilson, who has been sitting behind Cedric Van Pran for the past few seasons. And when Van Pran has gone down, Jared Wilson's came in and been a solid center. So I'm not worried about center position. My main questions on offense are the right tackle position, if Carson improves, and wide receiver. Now, we do have good backups at the offensive line. Monroe Freeling, like I mentioned, he's a sophomore, left tackle, highly touted out of high school. Micah Morris, he played a little fullback last year in our jumbo package, so and he played a little guard last year, and he was pretty good. Drew Bobo, I believe that's Mike Bobo's son, redshirt sophomore, backup center. Sadly, Kelton Smith just recently has announced that he's retiring from football because of a medical condition. Sadly, hope everything goes well for him. But moving on, Bo Hewley is the backup right tackle. Jamal Merriweather is going to be battling for that backup right tackle position, and Gus Gamage is going to be fighting it out for the third string center position. Kirby also is bringing in a good bit of freshmen on the offensive line. Marcus Harrison, Nair Daniels, Daniel Calhoun, who is highly touted, Malachi Tolliver, also highly touted, and Marquise Easley, also highly touted, as well as Michael Uni. So, with that being said, that's our offense. The only questions I have are right tackle, and that's pretty much it. I have a lot of trust in our offense as long as we make the strides we need to and improve. Going over to the defense, we bring back a lot of senior talent on the defensive front seven. Notably, Tierney Dawkins, Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, Michael Williams, Smile Munden, and Chaz Chambliss, as well as CJ Allen. My main concern is, will we have a defender on the defensive line breakout this year? We've been waiting for Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, and Tierney Dawkins, one of them, to break out for the past couple of seasons, and they haven't. Warren Brinson has been the most explosive out of them. However, he's been inconsistent with that explosion. He has the potential. Nazir Stackhouse, same, has the potential, but who is going to break out of them? Behind them, you have a lot of young guys. Christian Miller, or Percy Miller, he showed signs of it this past season. A lot of our tackles for loss that were from the D line that were not by the starters were by Christian Miller. So he could make a breakout. Jamal Jarrett and Jordan Hall, both two true sophomores, could make a breakout this year as well. Behind them, we have a bunch of freshman talent. Joseph Jonah Agoye Jordan Thomas, Justin Green, Nnamdi Agboko, and Nazir Johnson, as well as a redshirt freshman transfer, Xavier McLeod from South Carolina. Can they get into the rotation and maybe just break out as a true freshman or a redshirt sophomore or redshirt freshman? Maybe, but we'll just have to see. I'm just looking for a breakout player on that D line. Who will it be? We'll just have to see. Linebackers, Michael Williams. Thank goodness Glenn Schumann has taken him from a more defensive end, inside defensive end role to a edge outside linebacker role. He kept getting he's more of a prototypical edge outside linebacker in my opinion. He kept getting at inside defensive end. He kept getting stuck with offensive linemen just in that mesh of offensive and defensive linemen. Couldn't get to the quarterback as much as we'd like him to see him do. But now with this, he can be what he needs to be. He can rush the quarterback. He can be that Azeez Ojulari, Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy role that we've been missing for a while. We'll see how he pans out behind him. Damon Wilson showed out last year. He got into some rotational roles. He played very well. Behind him, though, you have Samuel Mpemba, who hasn't really seen the field as a starter. He didn't see it last year as a true freshman. He was compared to Lorenzo Carter out of high school, and if that's true, he's going to be a monster for us. On the other side, we have Chaz Chambliss, who also is going to a more edge role. He's been very consistent. He's been very solid for us. I think he's reaching his ceiling as a college player. He's very solid. So we'll see if he can improve. And if he can improve and make a jump to be more of an edge presence, I'd be very impressed and very surprised. Behind him, I believe, is a former walk-on, Gabe Harris. He was a true freshman last year. He played pretty good in the little time that we saw him. Very good player. I mean, you got to be a really good player to start on this Kirby Smart front seven. So I don't doubt that. He had some good plays last year. Then on the inside, we have Smile London and C.J. Allen, dynamic duo at linebacker. C.J. Allen changed his number from 33 to 3 from last season, embodying the Roquan Smith role. Smile London, very, very consistent linebacker for us. He's going to be a very good player this year as well. Behind them, two really good linebackers too. Jalen Walker, who in my opinion is the Swiss Army knife of the defense. He's played edge. He's played inside linebacker. You could probably put him at safety, and he would excel. He's just a very good football player, and I'm excited to see him this year as well. Raylan Wilson, who was a true freshman last year, he played good in the time that he had to, but I'd like to see him improve as a defender in Kirby Smart's defense this year. Troy Bowles is behind him, who's a true freshman last year. Didn't see the field really, so we'll see what happens with him. We also have a couple of freshmen coming in at linebackers. Justin Williams, very highly touted. Quintavious Johnson, Chris Cole, and Chris Jones. Going to the secondary, we got at the two corner spots projected is Julian Humphrey at left corner and Dalen Everett at right corner. Now, these are two sides of one coin. Julian Humphrey impressed me a lot last year as a redshirt freshman. He came in and started over Dalen Everett at some points in the season, and he was locked down. He played very well, especially in that Missouri game. Dalen Everett was just so shoddy last year when it came to coverage. He got beat a good bit. He just was not consistently good in coverage. But he was just a sophomore last year. I could see him making a jump. So we'll see. He's going to be fighting it out with a true freshman, Ellis Robinson, who is going to be wanting to have some playing time. He was a 5-star out of high school. We'll see what happens there. Daniel Harris is behind Julian Humphrey. We saw him a little bit in the bowl game. I don't know what to expect from him yet. He could play outside corner. He could play the star position that Javon Bullard played last year. We'll just have to see. Speaking of that, the player that's projected to play that is Joel Aguero, who's a true freshman last year. Very highly touted out of high school. I'd like to see good things from him. We'll have to see. He's going to fight it out with David Daniel Sisavon and Kyron Jones. Then at safety, we have Malachi Starks at free safety projected and Dan Jackson at strong safety projected. Dan Jackson, he's a lot like Chaz Chambliss. Very solid. Not the most talented football player in the world, but he's very talented and very consistent for us. So I'd like to see him get some playing time this year. Behind him, you have just Corey Thomas and transfer redshirt sophomore from Alabama, Jake Pope. Jake Pope could fight his way up the depth chart and try to get in that rotational role at safety. We'll just have to see there. Behind Malachi Starks is a freshman, true freshman, KJ Bolden, 5-star out of high school. He is going to be something else. I remember I watched him in the spring game. Once again, spring game. I already made that clear. He was very good from what I saw, the little that I saw of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to go for that strong safety role or the nickel role. So we'll see there. Behind him is a redshirt freshman, Justin Rhett. And we have, like I said, those two big freshmen, and then we have Andre Evans, a freshman, at the left corner spot. We still have Peyton Woodrick and Brett Thorson. One other thing I was going to mention, both Julian Humphrey and Christian Miller this offseason flirted with the idea of entering the transfer portal, but after they entered it, soon after, they withdrew their name and came back to Georgia. So a good gets by Kirby and this staff. So, with that being said, let's check out Texas's roster. Well, Texas, they bring back another quarterback as well, Quinn Ewers, who was very good quarterback last year, led Texas to the playoffs where they lost last second to Washington. But they bring Quinn Ewers back. I'd say the one thing that he needs to improve on is footwork and deep ball accuracy, probably. Arch Manning behind him, he's not seeing the field this year, but we saw him once again, spring game. He's very talented. Shocker, a Manning football player is talented. Then we have Trey Owens, freshman, at third string. So the quarterbacks, you're good. You should be good. At running back, C.J. Baxter, Jaden Blue, and Trevion Windsor. C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue saw time last year. They were very solid behind Jonathan Brooks. Can they fill the void of Jonathan Brooks? I think C.J. Baxter can. C.J. Baxter is a very talented running back. I'm not worried about their running back room. Now, wide receiver, this is the issue. You only have 2 returning receivers off last year's team that were starters. And Jonte Cook, who was a freshman last year, and DeAndre Moore, who was also a freshman. You also have Ryan Niblett, who's a depth receiver, but we'll see if he finds any playing time this year. You filled that void with transfers, just like Georgia did. You went and got transfers as well, including one Isaiah Bond from Alabama, junior transfer. He was Alabama's probably best receiver last year. He was just electric. He was electric, especially on deep passes. That was a good get. You got Matthew Golden, a junior transfer from Houston, and you got Silas Bolden, who was one of Oregon State's best receivers. So there's some help at the wide receiver. You also brought in 4 freshman receivers in Parker Livingston, Ryan Wingo, who I believe was the best receiver in the class, Freddie DeBose, and Aaron Butler. I would say with that, your receiver room is at least filled with talent. At tight end, hopefully to help out the receiver room, it's a lot more veteran. You bring in Amari Niblack from Alabama, who's a junior, one of the safety blankets for Jalen Milroe last year. You put on an Alabama game, you're going to hear Amari Niblack's name. Behind him, you have 2 senior tight ends, Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis. So hopefully this veteran tight end room can help out while these young receivers get used to playing in the system. Now, the offensive line for Texas, very good. Kelvin Banks is probably going to be a first-round pick. Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, DJ Campbell, and Cameron Williams. All juniors and seniors, all very good. A lot of them came in. A lot of them came in and were freshmen, sophomores together on the same O-line. So they're going to be good. Behind them, you have a redshirt freshman, Trevor Gooseby. You have Neto Umezuzu, redshirt sophomore. Connor Robertson, redshirt sophomore. Daniel Cruz, a freshman at center. Cole Hudson, junior. And freshman Brandon Baker at right tackle. So the offense, I have no issue with the offense for Texas besides the wide receiver and the depth and just the experience of the wide receiver and how that's going to play out. The defense, we'll just have to see. Once again, Texas went to the transfer portal to help bolster their D-line, which before the transfer portal was nothing to write home about. They have one returning starter in Vernon Broughton, redshirt senior, at defensive tackle. Then they brought in at edge Trey Moore from UCLA, at D tackle Jermaine Lowell coming in from Louisville, Tiali Savai coming in from Arizona, and Bill Norton, who was a Georgia defensive lineman, depth Georgia defensive lineman 2 years ago, coming in from Arizona. These guys are going to have to make a big role for Texas if they want to have a good D-line. You also have Alfred Collins coming back as well in the D-line. I missed that before I mentioned it. And you have Baron Sorrell as well. Sorry, that's linebacker. Oh, look at me getting ahead of myself. So, yeah, your starting D-line, if it works out with the two transfers, will be fine. Now, behind them, you have Sidir Mitchell, redshirt freshman, Jeray Bledsoe, redshirt sophomore, and Aaron Bryant, redshirt sophomore. You're not void of talent. You're just void of experience. You have a couple of freshmen as well in Colin Simmons, Zena Umezuzu, I guess maybe related to, who was it? The guy on offense, and Alex January. So as long as your D-line works out, you'll be fine. Going to the linebackers, it's another good bit of talent and depth. It's a good bit of talent and experience. Baron Sorrell, David Jabimba, and Maurice Blackwell, all seniors leading the linebacking core with very talented sophomore Anthony Hill Jr. helping them out. Linebacking core, if it's like it was last year, is going to be fine. Texas had a pretty good defense last year. Behind them, you have Ethan Burke, a junior, Darian Gullett, a redshirt freshman, Leona Lafau, a sophomore, and Tausili Akana, redshirt freshman. You also have freshman Ty Anthony Smith, who's going to help them out, and Justice Finkley Jr. and Colton Vasek, redshirt freshman. Linebackers, you should be fine. You have a lot of experience, so you should be fine there. Now, in the defensive backfield, Gavin Holmes is a senior this year. You have Malik Muhammad, who's a sophomore this year at the other corner spot. You have fighting for one of the corner spots is Javion Cole, a junior transfer coming in from San Jose State. Just bringing in depth, and if he works out and gets a corner spot, then that'd be good for him. Warren Roberson, a redshirt freshman, is going to be fighting for that second corner spot. And freshman Wardell Mack is going to be fighting. Freshman Wardell Mack and freshman Kobe Black are going to be fighting it out as well for those corner spots. At star, Jade Barron, who's a really good player for Texas, senior this year, going to be really good for him. And Jalen Guabo, A junior is going to be behind him for depth. Now, the safeties, Derek Williams, sophomore, and then you have two freshmen behind him, Xavier Filsami and Jordan Johnson Rubel, both true freshmen. Now, the biggest get for the secondary was Andrew Mukuba, a senior transfer from Clemson. He was a starter on that really good Clemson defense. And I have no doubt that he's going to be a starter here. He is so good. So, very good get for Texas. You have Michael Ta'afi and Jelani McDonald behind him. So, there's your defense. In the special teams, you got Bert Auburn back, really good kicker, and freshman Michael Kern is projected to be the punter. So, there is your deep dive into the Georgia and Texas rosters. Now, I'm going to pick a game. This is how this is going to work. I'm going to pick a game, and I'm going to stick with it. So, this game is going to be a big game for both teams. Georgia going into Austin. To me, it could go either way. My main reason for picking who I am is because of the uncertainty at two positions on the loser's team. And I think Georgia wins on the road at Texas. The uncertainty at the defensive line and the uncertainty in the wide receiver, the wide receiver is going to be fine. The uncertainty in the defensive line room, if Trevor Etienne and Branson Robinson get going and that D-line can't hold up, it's going to be a long day for Texas. So I believe Georgia wins it. Could be the bias showing, but like I said, it could go either way. It's hard to pick a game like this in June, so that's what I have. I believe Georgia beats Texas in Austin, and we'll see what I think with the others. That'll be doing it soon. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Go Dogs.